about digital platform business models, we interact with them so much in today's economy as individuals, as consumers, as employees, as citizens. The digital platform business model, it's amazing at fixing inefficiencies. And in terms of maximizing economic and social value, the intersection of the two, it's where most value can be created. To give you some examples, when we interact with e-governance services as citizens, there is an amazing space there for fixing inefficiencies and leveraging digital business models. For instance, if I move from one city to another, from one country to another, I start my digital interaction from zero with that specific digital space. There is an amazing opportunity to do something in that space. In the same time, many things that happen in the urban space, from mobility, from education, from our impact on climate, can be leveraged and can be optimized with the help of digital platform and ecosystem business models. So when it comes to public sector, there's only so much that can be done alone by the public sector. You need a very strong private-public collaboration. And it's really exciting actually to watch this space currently and to observe that there are more and more startups that actually bring together the public sector with the private sector, and they create a value proposition that can only be made relevant to the consumers, to the citizens in that way. So for instance, there are startups that try to regenerate urban areas, neighborhoods that are dead economically or socially. They work with the public sector, they work with the private sector, and they try to create a value proposition that attracts locals or tourists in that space. Mobility, I mean, we don't necessarily want to take a cab or to go by bike when we want to commute. We want to get from A to B, and for some commuters that might mean getting a train, getting a bus, taking a taxi, or taking a bicycle. More and more local startups are trying to offer mobility as a service with private-public collaboration. Healthcare, it's a really hard one to crack because it's also highly regulated, and there are more examples of highly regulated public services which can tremendously benefit from digital platforms. But this is where you need a very strong private-public collaboration in order to ensure that digital trust. You don't want your healthcare data just leaked out there, and this is why we don't see as much progress as we have hoped in spaces like healthcare. I was mentioning the big requirement for private-public collaboration. Now, private-public collaboration, of course, means you have people from very different worlds, the public sector people and the private sector people. On the private sector, you have the incumbent companies, the really traditional ones, you have the new digital giants, and you have the startups. This triangle alone, it's also bringing very different styles of working. In order to make a digital platform and digital ecosystem work for the public sector, or really sort out some socioeconomic issues and scale them, you need to bring together this private sector triangle with the public sector. Now, all of those four different target groups of stakeholders that are key in order to make sure that the digital business and the digital ecosystem works have very different styles of working. You know, if you compare a startup with a traditional corporation, with a giant technology corporation, with the public sector. So the biggest challenge is actually organizational mindset, is collaboration, it's open innovation. Now, we see more and more cities that in countries that make great progress in this space, but it is a slow process where most partners engage. They need to understand that there is a compromise in order to make it work. They need to dedicate enough time and invest enough energy to make it work with each other, to respect each other's ways of working and opinions. But ultimately, it's a win-win scenario that can only happen when the very strong collaboration between the private and the public sector happens. Obviously, when people think about digital business models like platforms and ecosystems and government, the first thing that comes to mind is policy. And if you go and read the news, you probably see European Union, it's finding another giant technology company for billions because of some mistrust elements. Now, obviously, this is very reactive. What we actually need in order to maximize the economic and social benefit out of digital platform business models, it's much more proactive, collaborative spirit, where the public sector leaders get together with the private sector leaders, they do pilots together, they test new ideas, and basically inform new policy, new regulation based on real-world scenarios. You can't write policy being independent from the private sector innovation and hope that you're going to reach that fine balance between maximizing innovation but also respecting the privacy and the data rights of your citizens and customers. So policy, proactive policy, it's one of those things, but it really needs doing better, again, a lot of collaborative mindset, a lot of co-creation, a lot of co-sharing, of co-designing, which is not necessarily the traditional way how policymakers and policy shapers work.